You're not even my real daughter." That's what my mother said the night she threw a trash bag of my clothes onto the porch and slammed the door. I was 17, and I still remember the exact sound that lock made, like final punctuation on a sentence I never got to write. I'm Janelle Park. I'm 29 now. I live in Denver and I work as a civil engineer. But none of that happened by chance. It started the moment I stopped being someone's secret and became someone's burden. Growing up, I always knew something was off. My mom treated me more like a guest than her own blood. She praised my half-brother for breathing and looked at me like I was tracking mud on her clean floors. I did the chores, got straight A's, took care of myself. But nothing ever made me enough. One night, everything boiled over. She'd had a few drinks. I had asked, stupidly I know, if I could apply to a college out of state. She stared at me like I'd just asked her to fund a trip to Mars. Then she said it. "You're not even my real daughter." I didn't understand at first. Then she said I was a mistake. Born from a one-night stand in her 20s, she was too ashamed to ever talk about. My whole childhood unraveled in 30 seconds. And just like that, she told me to pack up and leave. Said I was grown. Said it was time I figured things out without draining her life any further. No warning, no backup plan. Just the porch, the dark, and a black trash bag full of everything I owned. I had nowhere to go. No one in the family really knew me. I was the quiet one at reunions, the one they always forgot to add in the group texts. My stepdad had passed away when I was 12, and most relatives had drifted after that. I stood there for hours until the neighbor's porch light finally went out. That's when I remembered one name. Uncle Gary. He lived across town. Never really part of the core family circle, but I remembered he used to give me comic books when I was little. I walked 5 miles that night with a busted shoe and a bruised rib from hauling my life over my shoulder. When he opened the door, he looked at me like I was a ghost. "What happened to you?" he asked. I told him. All of it. He scratched his beard and sighed. "I've got space in the garage," he said. "No heat, no plumbing, but it's dry." I nodded before he could finish. The next morning, I woke up on a rolled-up yoga mat next to a washing machine and some old paint cans. I was sore, hungry, and embarrassed, but I was safe. Uncle Gary handed me a mug of instant coffee and a warning. "Don't expect a free ride. You stay out of trouble and you pull your weight, or you're out." So I did. I took double shifts at a sandwich shop downtown and still showed up at school. Exhausted but determined. My classmates didn't know I slept in a converted garage and changed clothes in the laundromat bathroom. They just thought I was quiet. I learned to stay small, invisible, survive. Until one day, something shifted. Our high school brought in a speaker, an alum who now worked in civil engineering. She talked about rebuilding old bridges in flood zones, making the ground safe for homes and schools. Something about the way she spoke, the pride in her voice when she said, "I get to build what lasts." It lit something in me. That night, under a flickering bulb, I searched scholarships on Uncle Gary's ancient desktop. I applied to every single one, wrote essays between shifts, practiced SAT questions on my lunch breaks. No one coached me. No one read my drafts. It was just me, willing myself forward. 3 months later, I opened a letter with shaking hands. Full ride. Tuition, housing, books, everything. A program in Denver that specialized in structural engineering for climate challenge zones. I had no idea how I'd afford the move, but I knew I couldn't stay. I waited until the morning Uncle Gary was nursing a hangover, and I told him, "I'm leaving next week. Got into a program. Full scholarship." He grunted. "Guess the garage worked out for you, huh?" I left with one suitcase, $200, and no goodbyes. But here's the thing I never saw coming. 12 years later, that same man would come knocking on my door again. Not to check in, but to ask for something. Something big. And that's when the real story starts. When Uncle Gary showed up at my door, I didn't recognize him at first. He looked smaller than I remembered. Maybe it was the years, or maybe it was the fact that for the first time in my life, I was standing taller. He stood there with a takeout coffee and a grin like we were old friends. "Kid," he said, "you turned out all right." I didn't know what to say. It had been 12 years since the garage, since he let me sleep next to a leaking water heater with mice under the floorboards. I didn't expect warmth. But I didn't expect him to act like he'd raised me either. "Want to come in?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. He stepped inside my place, a modest but bright duplex in Denver with polished floors and shelves full of engineering books and small plants I somehow kept alive. He looked around like he was trying to place me in this life. Like maybe he was still seeing the girl in a torn hoodie, not the woman who designed bridges for a living. We sat. He talked. Told me about how the old neighborhood was falling apart, how his son, my cousin Tyler, was still figuring it out, even at 31. I nodded politely, but something about the way he kept circling around made my stomach tighten. Finally, he leaned back and said it. "You know, I've been thinking, that garage really changed your life." I stared at him. "Yeah, I guess it did." "And now you've got this nice place," he said, gesturing vaguely. "Good job. Stability, all thanks to a little help back then." I waited. He smiled. "Thing is, I've got some money trouble. The house is falling apart, and the city's on me about code violations. Tyler's been trying to get a loan, but banks these days..." He trailed off. Then, "So I thought, maybe you could help. Maybe transfer this place to my name temporarily, just so I can show some assets, secure a loan. Then we switch it back. No big deal." My mouth went dry. He wanted me to sign over my home. My home. The home I bought after eating from vending machines through college. After graduating with honors while working night shifts. After spending years proving myself in a male-dominated field. After turning down jobs that would have paid more because I wanted to work on projects that mattered. Public housing, flood zones, disaster recovery. This wasn't just a home. It was what I built when nobody gave a damn if I survived. I looked him dead in the eye. "You want me to transfer my house to your name because I once slept in your garage?" He had the audacity to chuckle. "Don't make it sound like that. I helped you when no one else did." "You didn't help," I said calmly. "You tolerated me, on your terms, in a freezing garage, and only after reminding me it wasn't charity." His face fell, then hardened. "Blood is blood, Janelle. I didn't have to take you in." "No," I said. "You didn't, and I've never forgotten it. I'm just not sure why you suddenly remembered me now." He stood. "So that's it? You're too good for us now?" "No," I said. "I'm just not as easy to use as I used to be." He slammed the door on his way out. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was unsure of my decision, but because I realized something deeper. They were never rooting for me. Not then. Not now. My success was only valuable to them once it could serve their needs. The next morning, I got an email from a Denver council project I'd applied for months ago. A massive rebuild initiative in low-income neighborhoods. I'd been named lead structural consultant. It was the biggest project of my career. I was still reading the offer letter when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. "Hey," a familiar voice said. "It's your mom." I froze. "I heard you're doing well," she said flatly. "I think it's time we talked. There's something you should know about your father." My heart dropped, and just like that, the past was cracking open again. I hadn't heard my mother's voice in 12 years. It hit like an old song you hate but still remember every lyric to. "I think it's time we talked," she said. "There's something you should know about your father." I didn't respond right away, mostly because I didn't know how. She'd gone radio silent since the day she locked the door behind me. Now suddenly she was calling like we were overdue for coffee. She told me he wasn't dead. Let me say that again. The man I was told had died when I was 12 wasn't dead. He'd left, walked out. and she had buried the truth under some half-finished story about a car accident because it was easier than explaining why my dad wanted nothing to do with me. I sat there, gripping the edge of the kitchen table like it could anchor me. "He lives upstate now," she continued. "Has a small auto shop. No idea you turned out so well. Thought maybe you'd want to reconnect." It wasn't an apology. It was an invitation to forget everything. But here's the part that really made my stomach turn. She didn't call because she cared. She called because she needed something. "I'm in a bit of a situation," she finally admitted. "Medical bills, mortgage issues. I wouldn't ask if it weren't serious." Of course, I didn't say no. I didn't say yes either. I told her I'd be in town for a project and could stop by. I needed to see it with my own eyes. 2 weeks later, I pulled into my old neighborhood for the first time in over a decade. The houses looked smaller. So did hers. But the cold I remembered, that was still there. I stepped inside and it hit me like walking into a freezer. That same smell of mildew, of faded memories, and something else. Resentment, maybe. She acted like no time had passed. Said I looked healthy, whatever that meant. I handed her the tea I brought from Denver. She set it down without opening it. Then I saw it. The picture frames. None of me. All of my brother, Eric, the golden child, the one who did get to stay. He came by that evening, apparently by coincidence, though I could smell the setup from a mile away. He looked tired, older than me despite being younger. Life hadn't been kind to him. That didn't stop him from smirking when I told him where I worked. "Oh wow, fancy job in the city. Mom says you're building bridges now," he said. "But can you fix a broken family?" I ignored it. Over dinner, burnt roast and forced smiles, they laid it out. Mom needed help keeping the house. Eric needed money to restart his life. Apparently, I was the one they'd always believed in. I nearly choked. "You kicked me out," I said finally. Mom blinked. That was a difficult time. I had to make choices. "You made me homeless," I snapped. Her expression hardened. "You had Gary. You landed on your feet. You should be grateful." Grateful. I pushed my chair back. "I didn't come here to give you money. I came here for the truth, and you gave me half of it." Eric stood. "You're not better than us, Janelle." "No," I said. "Just better off." I grabbed my coat, but before I could reach the door, she said it. "If you walk out, don't bother trying to meet your father." I froze. "What?" She stood there, arms crossed. "He doesn't know you exist. I told him I lost the baby. And if you try to show up now and ruin his life, I swear I'll make sure he never believes you." My breath caught. My knees almost buckled. She lied to him, too. She didn't just erase me from her life. She erased me from his. I turned, slow and steady. "Then I guess it's time I introduced myself. Properly." And just like that, I had a new plan. I drove home from that dinner on autopilot. My hands clenched the wheel so tight I didn't notice the ache until I pulled into my driveway. The porch light flickered on. Warm, steady, and for the first time in days, I felt grounded. But I couldn't sleep. Not because of the anger. I knew that beast already. It lived with me for years. What kept me up was the clarity. They never missed me. They missed what they thought I could give them now. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted a funding source. And they didn't even try to hide it. So I started digging. The next day, I called in a few favors. Contractors I'd worked with on urban redevelopment projects. Lawyers I met through pro bono housing cases. I asked them one question. How do you protect what you built from the people who once let you rot? By the end of the week, I had a trust set up. My home, my savings, my future income from the council contract, all placed in a protective shell with one condition. None of it could be touched by anyone who had a direct blood tie to me. I also wrote a letter, a real one. Certified return receipt. I mailed it to my mother's house. It was short. Just a paragraph. I told her I knew the truth now, about my father, about the lie she used to keep us apart, and that I planned to meet him, that I wouldn't let her control the narrative anymore, and that I was done giving chances to people who thought I owed them something for surviving their neglect. 2 days later, she called, screaming, "You ungrateful little girl, after everything I gave up." Click, blocked. Then came the messages from Eric. Same tone, different words. "You think you're better than us now? You're nothing without us. You lived in Uncle Gary's garage, for God's sake." Yeah, and now I own a duplex. So I sent him back a single text. "Thank you for the motivation." Then blocked him too. The next step wasn't revenge, it was restoration. I filed a petition through a local mediator to request official contact with my biological father. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was a simple declaration. I exist, and I deserve to be heard. He called me 3 weeks later. His voice shook. Mine didn't. "I didn't know," he said. "I swear. I thought she lost the baby." "I figured," I replied. "You still want to meet?" He did. So we did. Quiet diner. No dramatics. He looked like me. That was the first shock. Same nose, same twitch when nervous. He asked about my life. I told him the truth. Most of it. Left out the garage, left out the garbage bag on the porch. I didn't want pity. Just space to finally exist in someone else's story. He said something near the end that stopped me cold. "I got a letter last year," he said. Anonymous. Just a sentence written in red ink. Said, "She's better off without you." I threw it out, but I never forgot it. I didn't send it, but I knew who did. That night, back home, I opened my safe. I took out the title deed to my house, the one my uncle tried to guilt me out of. I stared at it for a long while. Then I did something I never thought I would. I called Uncle Gary. He picked up fast. Well, look who remembered where she came from." "I remember everything," I said. "That's why I'm calling." He got quiet. "I want you to know," I continued, "you don't owe me anything. And I don't owe you either. So you can stop telling people I abandoned you after all you did for me. You let me sleep in a garage. That's not parenting. That's storage." Silence. Then I added calmly, "Also, you might want to check your mail. Legal notice should have arrived by now." "What notice?" he snapped. "The one letting you know I filed a cease and desist. If you keep using my name to ask people for money, you'll be hearing from my lawyer instead of me." His voice cracked. You think you're untouchable now?" "No," I said. "Just unreachable." I hung up. And just as I sat down, feeling the weight start to lift, my phone buzzed again. A private message. From my biological father. 3 words. "She called me. She called me," he said. I stared at the message like it might catch fire. I hadn't even told him about the cease and desist, about Uncle Gary's threats, or how my mother tried to block me from finding him. But somehow she still got to him. Again. I called. I had to. He picked up fast. "She said you're unstable," he said quietly. "Said you have a history, that I should be careful." I closed my eyes. "Did you believe her?" A long pause. "No," he said. "But I'm angry, not at you, at myself, for not finding out the truth sooner." That sentence landed like a stone in my chest. Not because it hurt, but because it healed something. "She erased me from your life," I said. And when I built something of my own, she came crawling back, expecting I'd forget all of it just because she suddenly needed something. "Are you okay?" he asked. And for once I could say, "Yeah, I really am." But she wasn't done. A week later, I got a call from the city's ethics board. Someone had filed a complaint alleging I used city resources to enrich a personal real estate deal. I knew exactly who did it. The details were too specific. Just enough truth twisted into a lie. It was the kind of move that didn't just aim to hurt, it aimed to destroy. And for about 30 seconds, it rattled me. Then I got mad. I pulled every permit, every contract, every email. I handed over everything. My name was clean, my record spotless. What she didn't know was that I mentored two of the city's junior auditors. They'd been my interns during their final year. The complaint backfired. Within a week, the board had not only cleared me, but launched an investigation into her. Apparently, she'd used my name on a housing assistance application years ago. Fraud. I didn't even know. But now the city did. 3 weeks later, I got the letter. She was being charged. I didn't rejoice. Not out loud. But when I stood on the bridge my team had just finished rebuilding, watching kids ride bikes over something I helped design, I let the wind carry a whisper. I'm not yours anymore. Eric tried to reach out next, saying Mom wasn't doing well, that this was too far. Too far? I slept in a garage while they ate Sunday dinner. I built a life out of scraps while they mocked me behind closed doors. They only came looking when I had something they wanted. I don't owe them peace for the mess they made. So I didn't answer. I went home. To my home. My dad and I talk once a week now. It's awkward sometimes, but it's ours. He met Riley last month. She made him cry, laughing over stories about me trying to install a ceiling fan and nearly drilling into a gas line. The past isn't clean. It doesn't need to be. But it's not mine to carry anymore. Sometimes closure doesn't look like forgiveness. Sometimes it looks like boundaries with teeth. Sometimes it's not about letting go, but about choosing what and who you'll never pick up again. If you've ever had to walk away from family to save yourself, I hope you know you're not alone. Drop a comment if you've been there. I'd really like to hear what you let go of and what you built instead. And if this story stayed with you, maybe hit subscribe. I've got more stories, and maybe one of them will sound a little like yours. Take care. Truly.